To make a water glass, we will start by adding a cylinder. I'm going to make my water glass slightly taller, so I'm going to scale it on the Z-axis. When you scale, you have to be careful where your cursor is relative to the origin of the mesh. For this mesh, the origin is this yellow dot here. If I put my mouse very close to the origin of the mesh and I press scale, it becomes very, very sensitive. So the adjustment of the scale is based on the distance from your cursor to the origin. If I place my cursor further out, it'd be a lot easier to control. So just careful when you press scale too close to the origin. You have some negative results. Okay, so after you add the cylinder, you will scale. I'm going to put my cursor away from the origin, scale on the Z-axis. I usually like to put my mesh back onto the floor, which is defined by pretty much the 0 coordinate. And then after this is done, I'm going to go into edit mode, select the mesh, press tab, and in edit mode, I want to start building the wall of the glass. So I will go over here and select faces, select the top face. So the shortcut E is extrude. You could, if you drag it away from the face, it'll be an extrusion. If you drag it into the face, it'll be an extrude cut. Now, without selecting anything else, if you press S, you could extrude and scale at the same time. Outwards, you get a sort of a disc like that. But if you start going inwards, you're actually creating a wall like that. Now I'm going to repeat that. Select the face, extrude, and scale. And then go inwards, and careful not to put your mouse too close to the cursor. If you do, you get this result again. So put it away from the origin so it doesn't get too sensitive. And again, of course, you can hold shift whenever you're moving things to fine tune. If you don't like using the mouse, you could actually ES and you can type it in. I'm going to say 0.9, let's see. So that's 90% of the diameter scale. And once you set that number in, you can see it in the top left over here. Press left click to confirm. And now you've got this extra geometry. And like before, you could press E to extrude out or inwards to extrude cut. Since I don't know how deep this is going, I'm going to have to use X-ray mode. You can click this one or press Alt-Z. Okay, Alt-Z to activate X-ray mode, and now you can see how deep your cut is. And still with the face selected, I can just press G and Z, and that's grabbing along the Z-axis, and I will move this geometry. Now to go into front view, that's about how a normal water glass is like. If I want to make it slightly higher, I have X-ray mode selected. I can select all these faces like that, and I will just grab along the Z, and I'll just make it slightly higher. And with that done, you can press tab, go back out into object mode. Now we'll turn off X-ray view. You can see these lines here. There is a shade smooth option. Once you press that, then it becomes a smooth glass. Let's try just shade flat and see what that effect will be like. Now we will assign the material in the material properties, which is this ball over here. Select that, and with your glass selected, you can press new to add a new material. You can name it if you want. I'll call it glass dash mats. You can select the color. I will just leave it maybe a hint of blue. And if you scroll down, you can turn on transmission to 1. That is pretty much it for the glass. Roughness, I'll make it 0, so it's a very smooth glass. And then when you go into display render preview, over here on the top right, you don't really see anything. That's because if you go over here to the camera, which is render properties, you need to tell Blender what engine to use, and cycles can do glass. Typically, you want to select GPU compute. That will use your GPU to compute the rendering results. And with these two selected, this is pretty much your glass, but in a dark environment. So how about we add a light? Shift A to add, go down to light, and we'll add a sun. The sun is omnious, so it doesn't really matter where it is, but I'll just drag it up so we can see what the angle is like. The angle you can adjust. I will add a bit rotation in the x-axis just to get some shadows. But the light is going straight through the environment. So I want to build a floor so the light will reflect just like a tabletop. Shift A to add a mesh, and I'll add a plane. Again, S for scale, scale it out. And now that is pretty much it. If you want to get rid of these edge lines, just like before, you left click the mesh, right click, and select Shade Auto Smooth. If you want to make a rendered picture of this glass, you have to add a camera. So we go Shift A to add down here, camera. Now the camera is in here, it's just hidden because it's inside the glass. If you press numpad 0, this is what the camera is looking at, which is nothing because it's inside the glass. So you can select your camera and move it just like an object. I'll just move it by using G along the Z-axis. I'll drag it up. And then I'll go top view, and I'll just move it over here. I'll press 0 again, the numpad 0, to go into camera view. Here you can use the pilot function, which is Shift and the squiggly line, which is next to your, or on top of your tap button, to the left of your 1 button. Now, if you move the mouse, you're controlling the viewport, the view of the camera, and you can use W, A, S, and D to control it. W to go forward, S to go backwards, A and D to go left and right, and also Q and E. Q is to go down on the Z-axis, and E is to go up on the Z-axis. Something like this will do. Once this is done, you can go into Render and Render Image, or shortcut F12. It might take some time to render depending on your computer. The sample you can see here, I'm taking 4,096 samples, but my computer is quite powerful, so that did not take much time at all. Once it's done, you can go Image and save it. If it is taking too long on your computer, you can go back over here into the render properties and go down into the max samples and just set this down to, let's say, 1028. That would, of course, affect the render result, but if you just want to see a preview of what it's like, then this could be an option. So you can see some noise down here, but when it's done and the denoising has been applied, it's not that much of a difference. Okay, so this is how to create a model of a glass cup, and then you apply the material on it and set it to have a glass property, which is the transmission and the zero roughness, and then put in a floor and a light, and then you get an image like this.